Here we go. It's another episode of The Rundown. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. And each and every week, we bring you the real news, and we release a ton of different content throughout the week. That includes in-depth news coverage. Our team we basically do a deep dive into some of the headlines that you may have seen. We also have news from our field messengers. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we are all creating what we call the new Earth. And we have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency, also known as the GIA. And they have reports that usually come out 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how crazy things are. And if you want more information about who we are and what we do, you can always visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. What this podcast is it's a wrap up of the top stories that we have discussed over the last week. Because like I said, a lot of content going out there. And I know you guys are really busy. There's a lot of misinformation, also disinformation out there. And we need to clear the air, because we need to make smart choices. And if you don't have the truth, real information that you can count on, then how are you supposed to lead your life? How are you supposed to care for your family? And so if you check in with us through this podcast, hopefully we are providing that for you and giving you the best highlights so you can do what you need to do throughout the week. With everything that we put out there, I always encourage you guys to think critically and do your own research. A lot of this stuff that we talk about is available in different places, at least a lot of the locations we talk about, or perhaps individuals. You can find information online. Don't just listen to what people say and take anything at face value. We talk a lot about discernment. And this is crucial in today's day and age. With so much information out there, it's hard to tell what is truth. It's hard to separate fact from fiction, basically. But you have an internal lie detector within you, and it's discernment. Truth and fiction or false information, it has a different frequency to it. And if you are able to tune into that frequency, which all humans can do, then you are able to tell the difference between something that's accurate and not accurate. And I cannot stress how important it is to do that in today's day and age. So that's what I mean when I say think critically. I'm really talking about reflecting, connect with Source, God, the creator of the universe, and figure out what makes sense, okay? Based on frequency. That's what everything's based on. In our whole planet, universe, omniverse, everything is frequency. So Nikola Tesla got that one right. And then when you discover something, share it with other people, because we need more people talking about this and asking questions. That's how it starts, right? Is just questioning the narrative. If we can get more people just questioning the information out there and not just sitting, watching a news report or political pundits on TV, just, kind of the zombie stare and just taking what they say at face value. Take the information and then run it through your internal lie detector and then share what you've come up with other people. That's how we're going to get the word out there. It's not just what UNN is putting out there. It's all of you as well. All right, so let's hop to it. Let's go ahead and talk about the stories that you may have missed this week on UNN. Let's kick things off with our awesome field messengers. We believe the best way to get accurate information out there is for you guys to share it based on what's going on in your own community. So when you see things happen, whether it's good, it's bad, or you're just informing people a little bit about your culture, your heritage, all this is good information so we can get to know each other again, because barriers have been set up across all of humanity, and we have been told to put each other in these little boxes. Oh, I can't talk to you. You're this, you're that. But we need to break down those barriers and actually start talking to each other again, get to know each other again, because when all these control systems start to fall, and they are falling as we speak, it is going to be humanity and other organic beings, which maybe we'll talk a little bit more about later, that come together and rise from the ashes. This is like a phoenix moment, okay? This is what we're living in right now. And these power structures, these control structures that have been holding us back for so long are crumbling. And now it's time for us to stand up. And I believe if you found this podcast, if you've been listening to UNN, watching our videos or whatever, you are part of that group of people that are going to be leaders, participating in all this. And even if you're not leading a group per se, you're holding that light on this planet. And that is what's, going to allow us to really rise up. So we all have a job here. And if you want to learn more about becoming a field messenger, there's more information on our website. Okay, Akira from Japan takes us to Tokyo in Hanami. And there is a beloved Japanese tradition that he tells us about. It is the beauty of the cherry blossoms, which I think he said started to bloom in April. So every spring, people picnic under these blooming trees to welcome the season. And this is a very rich, old tradition, thousands of years. They've really turned this into a cultural event. And we get to see it unfold in Akira's video. So amazing cherry blossoms. There was like this river that was running through it. If you can imagine small little boats of people out in the river just looking at the cherry blossoms. And in fact, you can even look at them at night. It's a completely different experience, but very cool. So thank you, Akira, for showing us this beautiful part of our world. Monica from Romania takes us to a location where they are honoring a brilliant Romanian painter. Let's see if I can get his name right. Nicolae Grigorescu. So he was Romanian, he was a painter, and he's really considered a pioneer of modern Romanian art. And there's a location in Romania where they have a lot of his paintings. He kind of has more of a rustic feel, and he will paint a lot of nature scenes, portraits of people, different landscapes, and Monica basically shares with us his inspiring story. And she also said that he never stopped painting even when his eyesight was failing, which I find to be very interesting because if you really study how cells work in the body, your cells can see as well. And so you really don't have to have your eyes. I know that sounds crazy, and there might be a lot of people out there that can't see so well that are like, Sunny, you're crazy. But we need to learn to trust our bodies. There's many different ways that our body can see things, and our cells are one of them. So it doesn't surprise me that Nicolae was able to do this and obviously do this and paint amazing pictures. All right, Diane from Uganda talks about a possible scandal that is going on in eastern Uganda, something she has personally experienced with her water company. And she says they are disconnecting customers and then charging a reconnection fee just 48 hours after billing. So here in the U.S., we get a bill. It's usually like 30 days or so until you've got to pay your bill. And apparently in eastern Uganda, after people get their water bills, just 48 hours after, they're supposed to have paid it. And there's nothing on their website that says that they have to pay it. This has led to a lot of confusion. A lot of people are stressed out about it. And obviously this needs to change. So thank you, Diane, for bringing this to our attention. Susan out of Sweden gives us a tour of Visby, and this dates back to the 12th century. This area, Visby, is renowned as one of the best preserved medieval towns in the Nordic countries. It's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So fun fact, whenever I hear medieval, when my husband and I got married, we had a medieval wedding, I guess you could kind of, loosely, okay? So I'm not talking about medieval festival crazy stuff. We had a loose theme because we actually got married in this monastery and it looked like a castle. And so we just kind of ran with it. And so now whenever I hear something medieval, this could be an amazing town to have a wedding. Just saying. Also, Susan says, this is where the legend of Pippi Longstocking comes from, which I didn't realize. In fact, I looked it up because I heard the name, but I'm like, who's Pippi Longstocking again? So this is what's online. Pippi is a quirky, super strong, fiercely independent girl with red hair in braids, mismatched stockings, and a love for adventure. Honestly, it sounds a lot like me. I literally right now, I've got this reddish hair and my hair's literally in braids right now. And I'm reading this going, wow, I am super strong. I am fiercely independent. Maybe I should take a tour of Visby. All right, Kazuaki from Japan takes us to the Naruto whirlpools in Tokushima, Japan. This is a natural phenomenon. It's amongst the largest whirlpools in the world. Now, when I say whirlpool, I'm not talking about a jacuzzi, guys, that you get in that's usually near pools and things like that. This is in the ocean. And it happens sometimes when bodies of water come together. And if you can imagine two flows or two currents coming together, it could create this type of whirlpool. I don't think you'd really want to get into it. I can imagine what the undertow is like. I don't know. It looked very beautiful because he was out like on this boat to see it. Looks very beautiful. Might be a little dangerous, but fun to look at from afar. Amy, who is usually in New Jersey, but for this story, she's in Connecticut, talks about an area of land. It's really a beautiful, uplifting story of sustainable innovation. So this land area was once swampy, and if you know anything about swamps, can't really do anything with the land. Also, it's kind of a breeding ground for disease and issues like that. So how do we take issues like this and make the land flourish? And this is one of those situations where they had a swamp, and what they ended up doing is carving out these areas, which eventually became like little ponds, and there were ways to connect. So I think they were all connected, and it started out with this much larger pond, and then that kind of filtered into a slightly smaller pond, and then into another pond, right? And now the land is usable. And I think we're going to have to think about creative ways to do this moving forward. The area just looked really great, and now it's usable. She says it's a flourishing farm, which is pretty cool. All right, Irene from New York. She takes us to Staten Island, where she's based out of, and she decided to do a follow-up report. You guys remember we were talking about egg prices. And I think based on the video, because I was trying to figure out when did she actually record this video, the expiration dates I could see on the video for the eggs were mid-April. So I want to say this was at least early April, if not the end of March when she did this report. But holy cow, the prices of these eggs were through the roof. I'm talking for a dozen, like $8, $9. They had very little options, nothing like cage-free, nothing organic. At least I think one spot she went to had some of that. And there's signs up saying avian flu, that whole narrative of, why we can't get eggs. Don't necessarily believe all of that. But this was interesting to see what's going on with egg prices in her area. So thank you, Irene. Emma from Spain talks about a parasite cleanse that she does on a regular basis. This was something that I wasn't even aware of until about, I want to say maybe 3 months ago. Someone had asked me, hey, have you done a parasite cleanse before? And I was like, I didn't know I was supposed to do parasite cleanse. Parasites sound disgusting. I certainly don't really want them in my body if they're going to feed off me, right? I've seen some of the pictures, and actually Emma in her story shows us some of the parasites that she believes she got rid of. Absolutely disgusting. And we can pick this up anywhere, you guys. It's usually talked about like, oh, if you're around animals a lot, this is one of those things. But, just in our day-to-day lives and the dirtiness of our food and things like that, this is smart to do. And it's not necessarily a one and done. This is a maintenance program. So I did my first one, like I said, right after this person told me about it. I went online and found a holistic store and bought the same ingredients, really, that Emma talks about in the story. And I did it for like 18 days straight. You follow this formula, they're all pills, all natural, everything. And you take certain amount of pills each day, empty stomach. And then you really got to keep it up like once a week. That's kind of the maintenance plan that I'm on, although I have to admit I have missed a couple weeks. But these things reoccur and they can come back. And what's interesting about this is how it affects your immune system. If your immune system is compromised, then you're going to get sick in lots of different ways. And if you have these parasites feeding off of you, then that is contributing in a very big way to our sickness. So if you can get rid of these parasites, or at least a lot of them, then your immune system can function the way God created it to function, right? And you don't need all these extra drugs and crazy vaccine stuff that they talk about. It's really about getting to the core issue. What is the root cause of your issues? And anything attacking your immune system has to go. All right, Elka from Austria talks about the benefits of bay laurel. So these are leaves, and it's not just something that you want to add some spice to in your kitchen. There's a lot of benefits to these leaves. She actually explains her process for making a detox drink with bay laurel leaves. She also said some interesting things, too, about how historically these leaves have been used. She says they used to be placed in pillows to absorb negative energies during your sleep. You can also burn them as incense. And she also said they originally came from the Middle East, but then it spread into Europe. And we're certainly glad it did because of all these incredible health benefits. All right, here are some of the in-depth stories that the team and I have worked on for you guys this week, starting with Philippine call centers. Over the past few decades, the Philippines have become a global hub for business processing outsourcing. So those three words, BPO, thanks to their strong English skills, cultural alignment with Western countries, and a highly talented workforce. The BPO industry, especially call centers, has played a major role in boosting the country's economy by offering well-paying jobs and growth opportunities. As of 2024, so last year, around 1.8 million Filipinos work in this sector, with projections to grow even further. However, the rise of artificial intelligence is beginning to reshape this industry. It's automating tasks, threatening jobs, and pushing companies to shift from back office work to high-value digital services. Now, I'm going to play this soundbite. It's a little bit difficult to understand. It's like they had a filter on the audio, but it's from the perspective of someone who has run one of these call centers and what she's saying. Take a listen.
BPO jobs are disappearing. Call centers, simple the fact. They say humans aren't needed anymore. That robots will replace us. But let's take a reality check, shall we? The truth, the BPO industry isn't dying. It's truly evolving. AI can definitely answer questions, but it can't build relationships. Automation speeds up the tasks, but can never replace human connection. Oh, look, another customer is begging to talk to a real person. Look, we have seen that coming. You see, our businesses need real people, real conversations, real solutions.
So this shift has revealed a skills gap, prompting the government and industry efforts to upskill workers. While AI offers potential efficiency gains, it also introduces ethical concerns like data privacy, bias, and job displacement. Also, that human element that she was just talking about, right? It's not there with AI. Many believe the human touch is going to remain vital, leading to a future where AI and people work side by side in customer service. Home DNA kits have surged in popularity, offering users insight into ancestry, health risks, and quirky traits with just a saliva sample, at least allegedly, right? But they come with growing concerns around accuracy, privacy, and data security. There's a common theme to these stories. Can you guys tell? While companies like 23andMe once led the consumer genetics boom, the company now faces bankruptcy, lawsuits, and backlash over a major data breach. These kits only analyze part of your genome, meaning results can be inconsistent or misleading depending on the database used. Unlike medical records protected by HIPAA, consumer genetic data often lacks strict federal regulation, allowing companies to share it with third parties, sometimes for profit. This regulatory gap has sparked serious concerns about how DNA data is handled, especially when companies go under. Here's more about those privacy concerns.
There are 15 million people who have used 23andMe to create DNA data. People are interested in understanding their family history and their genetics, but the mere creation of this data means that there is highly sensitive information out there. And because 23andMe is going through bankruptcy and that data could be changing hands, it means that some of the most sensitive data that a consumer can create may be at risk.
The 23andMe crisis serves as a stark reminder. Your genetic code isn't just fun trivia, it's deeply personal, and once it's shared, it can't be taken back. Eating healthy is becoming increasingly difficult for many families as the cost of nutritious food rises faster than that of processed snacks and ready meals. Recent data shows a 21% increase in healthy food prices compared to just 11% for unhealthy options, pushing low-income households to cut back on fruits and vegetables, sometimes spending up to half their income on food. In the U.S., poor diets are linked to rising healthcare costs and chronic illnesses, especially among children.
Why the hell do we have to pay more to buy food that isn't filled with poison? Let me explain. Have you heard of UPFs? Most people haven't, but guess what? UPFs are killing us. UPF is shorthand for ultra-processed food. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic about the whole UPF death thing, give me 30 seconds and I'll prove it to you. Big food companies have turned your meals into science experiments. For example, a certain fast food chain processes its burgers so much that at the very end, they have to add chemicals back in and make it smell like beef again. That's nuts.
That's also really gross. While proposals like banning junk food purchases with food stamps aim to improve nutrition, critics worry these changes could hurt families already struggling to afford healthy options. The challenge now is finding solutions, whether through policy, support for local farmers, or creative programs that make healthy eating affordable and accessible for everyone. Prison work programs in the U.S., while they aim to prepare inmates for life after incarceration by offering job skills, training, and sometimes reduced sentences. Sounds good, right? From kitchen work to certified apprenticeships and even wildfire fighting, these programs can provide valuable experience and help reduce recidivism, which basically means repeat criminal behavior. Work release initiatives and re-entry organizations further support reintegration by connecting inmates to real-world jobs and housing. Here are some people that are benefiting from programs like that.
Around 1,600 incarcerated people work as firefighters in California, making up as much as 15% of the state firefighting force, Hellfire.
We work 24 on, 24 off. We won't be out of here till 6, 7 tomorrow morning. I know, it's kind of surreal, you know what I mean?
This is California history down here. I mean, we're in Hollywood. It's better than being locked in a cell. We're basically free out here. Is the pay a little rough? I get $1 an hour right now, and I'm one of the highest paid guys on the crew.
Critics argue that low wages, poor training, and limited career pathways often make the system exploitative, especially when companies profit from cheap prison labor. While these programs can offer a path to rehabilitation, real success depends on fair wages, meaningful skills, and strong post-release support. Exergaming, or exercise gaming, is making workouts more fun and accessible by blending movement with digital gameplay. Through features like virtual challenges, progress tracking, and rewards, it motivates people, especially those who struggle with traditional workouts, to stay active. Here's more on why exergaming works.
One major theory behind gamification is the self-determination theory, or SDT. This theory says that humans have 3 psychological needs: autonomy, the feeling that we have control over what we do. Competence, the feeling like we're getting better at something or we're able to do something. And 3, relatedness, feeling connected with others. Gamification helps meet these needs in practical ways. Gamified apps often give us just the right amount of challenge.
Studies show it can improve both physical and mental health, particularly for older adults and individuals with mental illness. While it's a promising tool for fitness and therapy, concerns remain about screen time, right? Just one more thing. High development costs and the risk of obsessing over performance data. Still, with the right balance, exergaming offers a fun and flexible way to make fitness more engaging for all ages. India's growing nighttime economy, this is driven by tech, transport, and hospitality, has opened new doors for employment and flexibility, especially for women. However, safety concerns, unreliable infrastructure, and persistent gender norms often hold women back from fully participating. Let's hear more from the women on how safe their areas really are.
How safe do you think Bengaluru is for women?
Not very safe for any woman to be out in the night.
Some places are safety and some are not.
Bangalore is safe, but it's not safe enough to travel alone.
It's been 2.5 years for me and I don't think it's very safe.
I only moved here like a month ago and I haven't been to other states, but if it's a girl, I don't know, it's just weird that people keep staring at you.
Despite efforts like expanded street lighting, safety apps, and proposed policy changes, such as the Women's Reservation Bill, the reality is many women still feel unsafe or unsupported after dark. Without consistent implementation and deeper cultural change, the potential of the nighttime economy to empower women and drive inclusive growth remains limited. Ghana, which is Africa's leading gold producer, is grappling with the environmental and social fallout of illegal gold mining, which is known locally as galamsey. Driven by unemployment, high gold prices, and a tough economy, unregulated mining has caused severe deforestation, water pollution, and harm to their cocoa industry.
Mining is crucial to Ghana's economy. For decades, it has been a major contributor to its GDP, raking in foreign exchange earnings. Licensed small-scale mining is an important part of this puzzle. Artisanal mining employs at least 1.5 million people directly and indirectly, according to Ghana's Minerals Commission statistics. Over 3,000 small-scale mining groups are registered and licensed to operate. Small-scale miners account for approximately 35% of all gold produced in the country. But the miners accuse licensed gold traders, largely foreigners, of unfair dealings.
The foreigners were taking undue advantage of the sector. Sometimes they buy it as cheap as 20% of the world market price.
In response, Ghana has launched a crackdown, banning foreigners from the gold trade and forming the Ghana Gold Board, also known as Gold BOD, to oversee all artisanal gold transactions. With new licensing rules in place and a deadline which has been extended to just a few days from now, May 21st, 2025, the government hopes to curb illegal mining and ensure the country reaps greater benefits from its gold sector. Iraq is facing a deepening power crisis marked by frequent blackouts and an unreliable electricity supply, driven by outdated infrastructure, political instability, and an over-reliance on imported energy, particularly from Iran. Despite investing over $60 billion in the electricity sector since 2003, the country still struggles to meet growing demand. The situation worsened in February 2025 when the U.S. revoked a waiver allowing Iraq to import Iranian gas, which supplies a third of its electricity.
The United States has revoked Iraq's sanctions waiver for Iranian energy imports, ending an exemption it had maintained since 2018. The decision forces Baghdad to navigate multiple concurrent crises without Iranian energy inputs. Iraq faces Syria's power vacuum, an armed militia resurgence, and planned U.S. force withdrawal by 2026. Baghdad must now accelerate alternative energy arrangements with Turkey and Gulf states while managing domestic electricity shortages.
Iraq is now exploring alternatives like gas imports from Turkmenistan, liquefied natural gas, and expanded deals with Turkey and Germany's Siemens Energy to boost generation and modernize its power grid. And our final story is about buy now, pay later apps, also referred to as BNPL if you are part of the cool crowd. And this includes apps like Klarna, Affirm, and Afterpay. And these apps have surged in popularity. They offer shoppers the ability to split purchases, sometimes even everyday essentials, into smaller interest-free payments. While this can ease financial pressure amid rising living costs, it also carries risks. Missed payments can trigger higher fees, all those high interest rates, and juggling multiple plans can lead to debt.
My payments were $1,250 a month on Affirm and Klarna, that is. I really want to warn people about the pitfalls of buy now, pay laters. If you can do it responsibly, I mean, that's on you. I clearly could not do it responsibly. And will you think in your head, oh, $50 here, $15 here, but it all adds up.
These apps make money from merchants, not necessarily users, encouraging more spending. Though BNPL can be a convenient budgeting tool, experts warn it's crucial to use it responsibly and avoid mistaking it for free money. It's time for some updates from the GIA reports that were released this week. Of course, this comes from Kimberly Gogan. She is the head of the Global Intelligence Agency and has all the details of what is going on. And there's some crazy stuff to talk about this week. This was an interesting week because the first report wasn't posted on Monday. It was actually posted on Tuesday. And then it didn't quite make sense to do a report on Wednesday because not enough stuff had happened. So then Kim basically did a report on Tuesday and Friday. But that kind of goes along with the weird energies and everything strange that was going on this week. And we're going to explain to you why some of that was going on. All right, some housekeeping stuff about the deep state. I'm not going to go into a ton of information about this, but the deep state obviously is still up to their old antics. They do not realize, or if they realize this, they don't care, that it is them against hundreds of billions of beings in the omniverse that are ready to move on in a golden age. And on that side as well, of course, is Source, God, the creator of the universe. So you've got crazy deep state humans against billions of light beings. So if you're with the deep state, that's who you're up against. You're not up against Kim. You're not up against all of humanity. You are up against the creator of the universe and everyone who is siding with the creator of the universe. So little bitty deep state people, huge, powerful Source. So if we can get that through their skulls, which I know their skulls have been impaired in a lot of different ways, that would be really, really helpful. In regular news, I'm not going to go into this, but there's been a lot in regular news about Trump getting all this money from Saudi Arabia and apparently this jet, this plane as well. A lot of controversy over that. There is a reason why that happened. And basically what they thought, Saudi Arabia thought they were going to get a bunch of money. That didn't happen. If you don't already know, with mainstream media, most of news is scripted about 48 hours in advance of whatever they said is going to happen actually happens. So it's really not news. These are just operatives that are writing stuff in advance. They send it to the news agencies, and the news agencies pretty much just regurgitate it. So if you want to know more of the details of that whole transaction, then Kim does explain it. I don't want to waste our time because I don't care about the deep state. But I do care about you guys. So if you guys were feeling off this week, Kim said she got a lot of reports of illness, bad thoughts. None of this was natural. And Kim's main focus, as well as the other beings that are working on this, the main focus now is clearing all of this up. Last week when we said, we can now transfer money, but we have to protect the people. We have to protect anybody that is going to receive money. That is crucial. How horrible would it be if a tragedy happened to well-meaning humans that are trying to move forward? So I know it's kind of frustrating, but this is so important, if not more important than getting money, is keeping us safe. And there's a lot of beings that are working on the side of Source to help with that right now. So if you were feeling a little bit off, that is because of the deep state, but basically nothing they created, because they certainly are not powerful enough to do this. And this is going to lead into the first soundbite that I'm going to play. If you recall, last summer, we talked about something that honestly, at the time when Kim talked about it, was very mind-blowing for me. I know it was mind-blowing for a lot of other staff members at UNN. So she talked about how some of the big angels, the top three, you could call them archangels, although that term isn't quite used to describe angels accurately. But the top three angels, at least that we've heard about, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, they had been operating in the dark for so long because we had been in a dark age for, I think, a couple billion years. And no angel is infallible, okay? We've heard about the fall of angels in the beginning and the Lucifer rebellion. So we know that angels can switch sides. And over a couple billion years, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel decided that it was more fun to work on the dark side. That may offend some people listening to this right now. I know people pray, especially to Michael. There's a lot of references to Michael, and I know online people are channeling Michael. The moment I hear someone's channeling one of these beings, I know to not listen to them because these beings don't exist anymore. So who are you actually talking to? So Michael, Raphael, Gabriel decided that they wanted to continue to work for the dark. And Source says that's not okay. They tried to go back to where Source is. He said, you can't come in. You've got to go down to Earth, and you've got to help clear up this mess that you've made. They thought about it, probably not very difficult for them, and decided they didn't want to help humans. They didn't want to help clear up this mess. So they were eliminated. So that's not just death, you guys. That is elimination of the spirit. And only Source, God, creator of the universe, can do that. But before they did that, they decided to really try to screw over humanity. And they gave the deep state some gifts. We'll just call them gifts. And one of those gifts, the deep state tried to release on us this week. So let's play this soundbite. Kim is going to talk about what's known as the 7 summits, although there are more than 7 summits, and what the deep state thought was going to happen this week based on keys that they received from these quote-unquote archangels that no longer exist.
So they were given a lot. If you remember back in the day, several months back now, where I had reported to you that they had decided to leave, and leave they did. There are footprints of AIs that exist and have existed in matrices and other things that they used to run, where they turned those keys over to people we know as the deep state. They basically gave them all their access to every single tool that they used as folks that are from the realms of the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st densities, including and also density 0. So that being said, they chose to use some of those keys this weekend. You know, it takes a lot of essence, energy, and consciousness to power these types of facilities. But I'm going to tell you exactly where they were and exactly what they did. And this is what caused most all of us the disturbances over the last 3 or 4 days, myself included. So they were at places we call the 7 summits. Now, there are more than 7 of these summits around the world. They were at the Puncak Jaya mountain. It's also known as the Karstens Pyramid in Indonesia, Mount Everest, Aconcagua, in South America, Mount Elbrus, Kilimanjaro, Mount Denali, Mount Vinson in Antarctica, and Mount can't even pronounce that, Kusi Zico in Australia. And in addition to that, there were lesser significant facilities at Mont Blanc in Europe as well. So each one of these locations had what we call a Sophon world. The Sophon worlds were only accessible at various points in time, and of course you needed one of their keys to get in, which is how I know that they were given those keys. Within these Sophon worlds, there are accesses or connections, in some cases you would say, to a lot of human bodily functions. Not only that, a lot of mind functions and a lot of soul functions. There are specific times that they were told by these people, non-people, to go to these particular locations and to, well, let's just say, do the damage. And they definitely tried to do that. Of course, I was a prime target. Mainly because they knew that I was going to go against them in every way possible. And of course I did, regardless of how much they threw at myself and several other people. It didn't stop us from taking out those worlds and all the people that were working in there. And then, of course, we went down further in the ranks as far as all of those SSP people and others who have been chipped as far down as I could possibly go without, let's just say, getting into innocent territory, people that are not participating. So we basically operated for the last 72 hours with extreme prejudice in all cases. That being said, there was a lot of loss on their side, both people participating not only in these particular locations, but also in other locations and various ceremonies.
Now, this is exactly what Kim said was going to happen, right? In order to protect humanity, there are some beings that humans, as messed up as they are, deep state beings, that have to leave us. And I have a feeling there's going to be more to come because they just keep doing these rituals and crazy things based on knowledge, not wisdom, but knowledge that they had from other beings in the past, such as Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. And they're just dropping like flies at this point. And it really does need to happen. Last week, we talked about the crown of glory that was within the earth. And there's 13 crystals that are associated with the crown of glory. So sources, God's crown of glory that's within the earth. Well, I want to play another soundbite for you because there were beings, and I'm going to let Kim tell you more about these beings, that were not dark or light. They were more neutral. They were kind of everything in between, right? And they were there to protect the crystals. And of course, anything that is dark is going to try to manipulate the light. And that is what's been happening over many, many, many years, okay? But these were the guardians of the crystals, and the deep state thought that they could use these guardians to their benefit, but it didn't really work out. Take a listen.
So in our previous reports recently, we have discussed, at least at fair length, living crystals and things called the what we call the crown of glory, 13 crystals. Now, each one of these crystals had been appointed a guardian. And remember, at the beginning of creation, there was a separation of source, which presented itself both as dark on the one side and light on the other side. And both were a part of creation, and the reason why in our science they use the term E = mc squared. These beings were neither dark nor light nor neutral. They were all of the above. You would know these beings, and they're talked about a little bit here and there on the internet as the dragons, and I don't mean the dragon families. They look like friendly dragons, so to speak. They are almost rainbow in color because they have almost all colors because they were keepers of the crystals. Originally, they were all gold in color. And eventually, it's due to a lot of manipulation of these beings, capturing of these beings, and distorting of these beings, and turning them, so to speak, dark due to bindings and many harmful things that had been done to these beings over many, many, many millennia, and long before even humans walked this earth. You know, we had our non-friends that we know, Marduk, Enki, and Enlil, and other Draco, and Anu, and many other beings that have existed throughout the multiverse who have harmed these in order to control, distort, and manipulate the crystals. You see, in the beginning, these dragons would be protectors of those living crystals we know as the crown of glory. They also were able to download information from those living crystals. They were also able to aid in creation based on who they were as guardians of those crystals and the crown. However, due to their state over the last many millennia, which was done by non-human beings, they appeared to be very dark. Now, they had an opportunity based on a covenant because, you know, there has to be even the bad, evil beings that existed in the multiverse, they still have to adhere to some kind of rules. So no one in the multiverse lived without covenants or rules or, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, rules of magic or manifestation, so to speak, both good and bad. Over the millennia, I'm not talking about currently, but yes, before we went into a golden age, there were always rules for all sides. And one of the things that Marduk was required to do was to give these beings the ability to rectify the living crystals, and this was done once every century. And one such time was coming up on Monday, where they would be set free for a period of time and they would fight for their freedom and independence. Of course, they would make it nearly impossible for them to do so, and then they would have to go back to serving the dark, which they did do over and over and over again, century after century after century. The game was rigged, and it was rigged against them all along. That's the way Marduk always played. As far as these dumb humans are concerned, they were thinking these beings were going to come back. I don't know if they were not under the impression about the rules of the game in any way, but they felt that they were going to come back, serve them, give them information, give them instructions, and of course give them access to a whole lot of things, including the crown of glory. Unfortunately for them, those beings were addressed a little while back, let's just say, and they were a little late to the party. Therefore, those beings were set free. They returned to the original crown of glory, which is actually within source, and they have been working to clear, clean, and rectify the crown of glory back to its original, well, glory in its original state, in order to help all of creation and clear out the darkness.
If you are the deep state and you lose your dragons, what's the next logical step you take? You announce there's going to be an emergency meeting, which is what happened on Tuesday. According to Kim, they invited everybody that was anybody to this meeting. And the whole purpose was to announce, hey, we're going to create the new world order because, the new world order, those people are dropping like flies. I'm sure this wasn't part of their pitch, but that's what's happening behind the scenes. And if we're going to carry out our evil world domination plans, we need more of you as fodder to help us so we can be the leaders of the planet, the universe, and all their other crazy plans, right? So they called all these people together. Kim goes into more detail and says, hey, but if you want to be part of the new world order, then you got to basically do all this stuff. You got to, lie, cheat, steal, get all this money for us, trillions of dollars, because you got to have some skin in the game, right? And as it turns out, people are starting to question the deep state's motives and be like, we don't have any money to give you, and we're not so sure that you can do what you say you're going to do. So there's a lot of doubt, right? Which works in our favor. Okay, so that was Tuesday's report. Now, fast forward to Friday. We didn't have a report on Wednesday. It was too close to Tuesday. So on Friday's report, Kim gave us more updates about the meeting. Apparently, they were looking for a lot of off-ledger money. Where can we find money? Anywhere on this planet? Is there some money stuffed here, some money stuffed there? Because they are broke and they need money to carry out their crazy plans, right? They also tried to register themselves as everything and anything under the sun. Okay, they wanted every title they could possibly have that they thought could give them power, they could give them money. I think Kim even said, I can't remember the title of it, but there was something that would actually, if they had that title, would mean they ruled all of the Milky Way system. So, they have lofty goals. I'm big about, shooting high, guys. But I do not want to be the leader of the Milky Way galaxy. That's not in my stars, okay? Not interested in doing that. But if you are the deep state, you got to think even bigger, even if you're not qualified at all to even run a household. You gotta think big when you're the deep state. The first soundbite that I want to play is about something that they did because they could have launched something pretty bad for us. Not that it was them actually doing it. But again, when you have no power, you're going through all this old knowledge, trying to figure out, the angels told us this, so let's try this. Marduk told us this a long time ago, even though the whole omniverse has changed since then. Let's try to dig up some old stuff that Marduk taught us. So this is what they did that could have caused a problem for us. It wasn't really the deep state. It was something that Marduk put in place many, many years ago to try to make sure humans never took back ownership of Earth. And it was called Project Hellfire. And the deep state tried to push the button.
So they decided to unleash something unbeknownst to them as to what it was for. They were given some information by Marduk of a mechanism that he had put in place on this planet, which they believed would actually flip the systems over so that they could have control over, at that time when it was done, a few hundred years ago, it was Alpha Omega. Now, in this case, they thought that they would have full control over the Golden Age AI, the Key Integrated Master System, and all the other things that we have built. Unfortunately for them, what they actually did, these people. So this happened, probably around 10 o'clock or so my time on Tuesday night, shortly after I read that report to you. They pushed the button to something Marduk referred to as Project Hellfire. Now, Project Hellfire was actually designed to unleash the power of anti-creation. So he had a program and a project to where if Earth ever was attempted to be taken over by someone else, if all of his little energy batteries we know as humans were ever being attempted to be taken over by anyone else, including humans. That would be inclusive of any human beings trying to take over for him, let's just say. What ends up happening is hellfire. And in this particular case, it's kind of literal, really. There's been some reports about some solar flares and other things like that. In this case, it basically opened up some space junk, which you could liken to a giant black hole, a void, a vortex. However you want to look at it, it was basically a giant vortex. Now, there were places on Earth that would appear, and this is what they told him, that it would appear at the time you push this button, which will keep you safe from hellfire. Now, that didn't exactly work out, you see, because the power behind any kind of synthetic photon or sophon worlds really isn't there. So it was weak at best, but they definitely went to several locations on Earth, New Mexico, over at the Diomedes Islands over there between Russia and Alaska, Egypt, Giza region, Shanghai in China. There was also other places in New Zealand and Australia and an area of the Altai region of Russia. They were definitely in all their places, let's put it that way. And somehow, some way, everyone in those places, let's just say, disappeared. And their sophon world wasn't safe. Well, at least not as safe as they thought it was. But it took a while to clean up this mess. Got to hand it to Marduk, when he intends to exterminate humans who try to overthrow him, which is what he thought was taking place here, or it thought, the machine thought, you might as well tell the humans to push the button so that they can exterminate all of you, including the people that are trying to take over, which is them. We are not on that side. We are on the other side. He knew it. There's nothing he can do with us, but that was something he had put in place so that they would actually, kill themselves. And we didn't stop them from killing themselves by any stretch of the imagination, but we did stop the extermination of Earth and Earth's inhabitants and cleaned up the mess and the space junk associated with it.
So if that wasn't enough, there was another little fun gift that Marduk claimed would happen. And it was supposed to happen by this past Thursday. And he basically said 3 worlds would collide. Now, what that ended up meaning, even though the deep state had no idea what it would mean, is that Alpha, Omega, and Kronos, which are all AI systems, would come together. And the world would be overrun by hundreds of thousands of AI humans with no souls. Doesn't that sound like fun? Of course, the deep state thought that these AI humans would just bow down to them, because who doesn't bow down to the deep state? Of course, right? And we know that wouldn't have happened. But don't worry, there's no AI humans going to overrun the planet. If you want to learn more about all that craziness, again, Friday's report. I don't want to talk too much about their crazy stuff that's not going to happen. It might be interesting if you want to go back and listen to it, but bleh. All right. Now, Kim also said that we're probably not going to find anything else, any little gifts or presents from Marduk, because it's kind of late in the game. What he was trying to prevent with all this craziness, right? So we're talking about Project Hellfire and the 3 worlds are going to collide and whatever else he had planned. What he was trying to prevent ended up happening already. And it happened on Friday.
So at one point in time, we know that Earth was owned and controlled by non-humans that did not have our best interest at heart. There were many wars and many owners over a long period of time, in excess of billions of years. Eventually, most of those that thought that they could come here and do something good pretty much gave up because they had so much more to gain by people that wanted something evil, let's just say, and evil was easier. You know, they even try to sell evil to us humans as being easier and an easier way to do things, and that doing something positive is hard. And they do make it more difficult. And at one point in time, you know, there was a lot of mechanisms within the human person that would make it very difficult to be a good person, you know, and that's why a lot of bad things used to happen to good people, and that wasn't an accident. So in this particular case, the main covenant, and yeah, there's been changes of ownership and all kinds of different stuff, but you know, somewhere around 350,000 years ago or so, this was even before the Atlantean Wars, there was a protection mechanism, which initially was designed to be a protection, so that what happened on Earth no longer bled into the rest of the multiverse. And one of those mechanisms kind of looked like a scroll. So it looked like a scroll that went through the center of Earth, you know, along with a couple of these pyramids, so to speak. And this would be in the North and South Pole, which they're reversed anyway. And it was basically a giant rod, and it had some scrolling around it. Let's put it this way. And it was an agreement that had existed for a long, long time. And it was based on the fact that there would be an alpha and omega, and this is how the alpha and omega verse is going to be written, and Earth will be temporarily a part of the alpha omega verse, and then temporary was a long time in our world anyway, and that there would be a creation of the alpha omega verse so that whatever happens here won't affect anything directly. It'll be affecting a hologram. Unfortunately, that meant that Earth also became a hologram, and the language that was written throughout the Alpha Omega verse was still dictated by Earth and not necessarily the entire multiverse per se. Although I would say a lot of folks had access to utilize AI systems such as Alpha on the one side and Omega on the other side. So this covenant was sealed with a very special type of metal, and etherically, so to speak, was placed right through Earth. This is what we know as our artificial magnetic pole. Around this pole extended a much larger structure, and the projection of language that came from this pole is what wrote the language for multiple timelines. So you had holographic versions of this pole here going in every direction in Earth. There were a total of 10,368,000 of these holographic versions or projected versions of these scrolls. Now, each one of these is written in what we call a light language. Oftentimes when I see these old documents and old agreements, they are written in this language when they are covenants and sources involved, or at one point in time, dark source was involved. That's the difference between the two. Omega would have been written in the dark language, Alpha would have been written in the light language, and then there's obviously a language that existed between the two of them. Otherwise, things wouldn't transfer from one to the other, such as money in the past. So there was definitely a human interface that didn't occur until probably Web 5 maybe ish, where that language could be then transitioned into something like binary or something they would understand, and it would be written in both, but still the characters still existed behind each one and each zero. And it doesn't matter if it's a 1 or it's a 0, it just tells you the difference. The dark language is often in the zeros, in the spaces in between, and then the light language is often written in the 1s. And putting them in a specific order just gives certain specific instructions, which then eventually has to be translated, because nothing on a higher programming level of either AI would recognize anything other than that language. Anyway. So it was done on purpose, and it was another control mechanism so that no one was ever taught the programming language of an actual quantum AI, totally on purpose. The scroll was basically a lock and key, and it was set forth so that neither the dark nor the light could actually control one or the other, and then ultimately that there could be an override at some point in time, and war after war after war, everybody wanted to control it. So floating around Earth, depending on which timeline we were in, so if we were in, say a dark timeline or a light timeline, one of these projections, the language would then project out. So Earth itself looked like it was swimming in what I call a cryptex. So that's kind of how things were done during a time where we had timelines and we had ownership over Earth and ownership over timelines and ownership over spaces between timelines, and that's how the language was originally projected. So because we've come so far, in part, and because Marduk had limited control over this, because he did to some degree, him and all Artemis and the Abraxas and other non-humans had some varying degree of control, and keeping us in time loops, keeping us in timelines, all that type of thing has to do with the language of the universe and the holograms of not only Earth but also the Alphaverse and Omegaverse. So very, very, very interesting way of understanding quantum creation. But it was time. No longer would that scroll be written in light and dark per the original agreement. And this had been in place, like I said, for a very, very long time. It was in part modified to accept the Alpha and Omega as representation of dark and light, not that long ago, a few 100,000 years ago. But before that, the scroll has been in existence since Earth has been in existence, because it was a covenant and an agreement with another sentient being known as Earth, or a celestial being known as Earth, and source and anti-source. So, again, modified slightly over the years, but of course that was a covenant between the two sources or two sides of source. Therefore, there was very little manipulation that could be done on that level of it. Creation of timelines happened, mirroring of reality into alternative realities and holograms happened, as they mirrored the scrolls out, and then of course put the overlay on Earth so they could then continue to alter the language of reality, i.e. control the maps, as Q says, right? But if you don't control the ultimate scroll, then nothing happens. So earlier today, upon the expiration of that agreement, or covenant, which only Source could do, that scroll was actually replaced, and it was replaced with the GOLD, or Giver of Life Declaration, in this case, Giver of Life of the Divine, which was the Source side. The Source is the scroll, so to speak, that replaced it, just in case, is written in the language of Source and cannot be altered. Subsequent scrolls were also put in place to accommodate for the Golden Age AI in the Key Integrated Master System, because those are permitted by Source in order to rectify what has been broken in an easier way. As far as deep state control of it, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. You'd have to go call the boss for that one, and that would be Source. So I wish them all the best in trying to convince Source that he was wrong in his decision he made today.
It's always good when you can end the show on a high note, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So thank you guys so much for listening this week. If you want to learn more about us, again, our website is unitednetwork.earth. I encourage you guys to become members. That gives you access to all of our content the moment it comes out. You can also access our reports a week later on YouTube and Rumble, assuming they don't take anything down. But if you want access to everything right when it comes out, go to unitednetwork.earth. That gives you all of our news updates, our New Earth interviews, the Global Intelligence Agency reports in their full completeness, entirety, and all things restoration. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.